What happens when the words, "How are you?" become confusing? When things are overwhelming and when all of the volume knobs of the stress get turned all the way up to 11, the question, "How are you?" can just cause a lot of static. It can feel like, well, it can really kind of feel like trying to find a particular piece of smoke and pulling it out and turning it into something solid that you can hand to someone and just show them and say, "Here, that's how I am." Sometimes things are overwhelming. This is a good opportunity to take a look around and say, "Oh yeah, this is a little overwhelming." What's happening in the world is completely new, unlike anything any of us have ever been in. None of us have been in a global pandemic that has hit every single country. None of us have ever been here before. So when we ask, "How are you?" what do we mean? Well, when we ask, "How are you?" when we hear that question, "How are you?" it can sometimes feel like we have to pick our way through sharp rocks. How do I answer this question? Is this person really asking this because they're curious? Are they just being polite? Sometimes when we feel overwhelmed and all of our knobs are turned all the way up, the temptation to be polite and to give that polite answer of, "Oh, I'm fine," can really override what's really happening. I've been trying to ask the question, "How are you?" with a slightly different perspective. And that slightly different perspective is to ask, "How are you?" as if to say, "What's the weather like right now inside your mind?" There's still lots of clouds. There's still lots of things we can't really put our hands on. It's impossible to touch a cloud, even as it is impossible to touch some smoke. When we feel overwhelmed, we feel overwhelmed. How do we define that into a simple answer of, "How are you?" Uh, what's the weather like inside your head right now? What's the weather like inside your heart right now? What are the winds like? Acknowledging when things are overwhelming can sometimes identify a difference between us, the individual, the person, and the whole experience in which we find ourselves. The smoke is still going to be there. The clouds are still going to be present. The weather will still be overwhelming sometimes. The winds will be strong within our mind, and our hearts will sometimes feel a low pressure front move in. Sometimes we will get discouraged. Sometimes we'll find something unexpectedly inspirational, like a neighborhood in Milwaukee that came up with an idea to have a parade in dinosaur costumes where everyone was 10 feet apart as they marched down the street. I laughed for moments. And that laughter and that inspiration doesn't mean that the clouds are all gone. We are complex, beautiful, nuanced, complicated beings filled with all kinds of elements that make up this magnificent person of you. And what you are feeling makes so much sense given everything that's happening. So the question, "How are you?" has changed. because sometimes we're not sure how we are. And that's a great place to start. So let me ask you, how are you? Comment below. Let me know what the weather is like within your mind and your heart. What are the winds like across your landscape? If there were a precipitation falling, what would it be? How are you? I'm Catherine Gabriel-Jones. I'm an encouragement coach. And even as much as I believe in you, I do want to know how you are.